This is Regenerative Skills, the podcast helping you to learn the skills and solutions to create an abundant and connected future. I'm your host, Oliver Gaucher. The Climate Farmers community is the place to be if you're working towards regenerating your farmland and business and want to learn from other farmers who are on a similar journey. Now, Europe is a very diverse continent with significant differences in biomes, landscapes, climates, cultures, languages, and context. So rather than looking further abroad for solutions, connect with others who found solutions to the challenges that are unique to us here. We have a central community chat on WhatsApp where you can ask questions, share your own observations, and simply chat with others who don't think you're crazy. We also organize regular skill exchange calls where experienced farmers share their knowledge and answer listener questions. Increasingly, we're even bringing the community offline by organizing gatherings at farms all around Europe. So if you're actively farming anywhere in Europe, you can join for free today through the website at climatefarmers.org under the For Farmers tab and click on Join the Community. And there's also a direct link through the show notes for this episode. I look forward to seeing you there. Hello everybody and welcome back. Now, I'm just checking in while I'm still on a short holiday. I actually just dropped my mom off at the airport at about 3 a.m. yesterday morning after a really wonderful week of her visiting us with me and my sister and her girls here at the farm. It's been such a blessing to have almost all of my favorite women under the same roof for a time. My family is scattered all across the world, so these little moments when a number of us can be together is really precious to me. And it's been a big motivation of why Alba and I moved out here to begin with. Now, though we only moved into this place back in December, it's already fulfilling the dream of bringing mine and Alba's families closer together. The downtime has done me a lot of good as well. Now, though of course wrangling a bunch of little kids is anything but relaxing, as most of you will already know, it's thoroughly fulfilling to watch them discover a few abilities and life lessons while finding their feet and their bearings through this gorgeous natural environment. They've been learning to take care of the chickens, to identify plants that both we can eat and which ones are stingy and pokey. And we've been playing in the river and making erosion barriers. And yesterday we planted trees for a new hedge, and I made some rainwater diversions in the road. And I also had the time to have some deep conversations with my mom and my sister, looking ahead for what we want in our lives. My mom and dad are reaching a retirement age, and they're looking at references of my grandparents, all of whom are in their 80s with rapidly declining health. We've talked about how we should be taking care of ourselves and one another as we age, and change from roles of care receivers to caregivers, and perhaps back. So things like risk factors, maintenance, and even graceful decline came up, all of which are very relevant to this ongoing topic of holistic health that we continue to explore on this show. So with that said, I'm excited to bring you this second part of this conversation that I had a good few years ago with my close friend and nutritionist, Crystal Honeycutt. This second part focuses on the topics of supplementation for faster recovery, the nuanced definition of regenerative health, and how all of us can rise above our low standards of health as they currently are in order to reach our superhuman potential. And so with that, I'll hand things over once again to Crystal. We were just talking about how some of these chronic issues can manifest from deeper seated problems and like this persistent stress. And I know, like so many other people listening today, myself included, have had some persistent or chronic health issues that require kind of a more urgent attention than simple nutrition alone can treat, or at least is more urgent in the time frame. Now, rather than reaching for the medicine cabinet or heading to the pharmacy, I know there are a lot of other natural remedies, especially herbs, that can act more quickly and treat issues that can be hard to address with just diet alone. So my question is, what should more people know about herbal medicine, and why might they want to consider it over pharmaceuticals?
Nice. Thanks for asking that question. So the way that I like to think of it is foods and herbs are both botanicals. I mean, the majority of our food are botanicals, right? Excluding animal products. So they're all botanical medicine. However, I like to think of food as being our primary building blocks of our bodies when we think about vitamins and minerals, and certain macronutrients such as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Those are the things that we need to regenerate our body on a daily basis. They help to run our body, and they help to regenerate our body. Herbs, on the other hand, or medicinal herbs, are more like pharmaceutical medications than they are like foods. And I know that that's tricky to say, so let me explain what I mean. Herbs, for the most part, have more specific and direct physiological actions than the broad spread action of our dietary foods. Okay, so we can use herbs to help specifically direct biochemistry in the body, to help it to retain a certain level of normal functioning. I think a good example of this is the immune system. So with the common cold, traditional wisdom has us, eating things like grandma's chicken noodle soup and resting in bed. And our bodies generally tend to say, hey, I'm not very hungry. I don't really want to eat anything. And I might want to take in a little bit of chicken noodle soup if I'm not running a fever. Okay. But the rest of food doesn't sound very good. And that's because your body has shifted gears. Right now, it's not focused on building up. It's focused on fighting this viral infection that's invaded your body. And we can talk about why you got sick in the first place, but that's another topic.
That is. We got to go way back for that.
Right. But what can help are herbs that help to boost your body's natural ability to fight off the infection. So what these herbs are doing, there's certain phytochemicals within these herbs, let's say echinacea is a really common one, that helps to amplify certain aspects of the immune system that are responsible for fighting infectious agents and also helping to modulate the inflammation that naturally comes out of fighting infection. So taking something like echinacea can help assist your body to overcome a virus in usually a faster amount of time with less acute symptoms, the symptoms that make you feel like crap, basically. Why would we want to do that? Most people can overcome a cold. Right? Most of us have immune systems that are able to encounter the rhinovirus, and within 5 to 7 days, we're pretty much back to normal. But that's if, number one, we're hale and hearty before we get sick, and it's just kind of a fluke that we got sick. And two, that we have the spaciousness and resources such as grandma's chicken noodle soup to help us be in that process without getting any more depleted than we already were to begin with. In the modern age, we really don't have that spaciousness, and rarely do we have grandma's chicken noodle soup at our doorstep. So if you're at the office and you've got the rhinovirus and everybody hates you for being there because you're spreading all your germs, but at the same time, your job feels threatened if you're not sitting at your desk, something like echinacea can be very valuable to boost your body's ability to recover faster and help you to overcome the infection with minimal damage. So all of us have probably been in situations where we get a cold and we can't shake it, right? It lingers for 10 days or even 2 weeks, or we get a cold and then right on top of that, we get sick again. And that really is because we haven't had the spaciousness and resources to help ourselves recover from the first cold or to be able to overcome that virus altogether. And with our modern lives, we're taking the kids to school, we're running to the office, we're feeling stressed out, we're staying up late, we're over consuming sugar, we're doing all of those things that actually undermine our body's natural ability to recover. So I think that herbal therapies can be incredibly valuable to people at every age and stage of their life, because they're just like the extra oomph. They're the extra help. And it's kind of funny because I run into a lot of people through my work who are very resistant even to taking supplements and taking herbs, because they have this idea that they need to do it themselves. Like, I have to overcome this myself. And it's some kind of like weird deal to your strength and integrity as a human being. When in reality, and social sciences have revealed this again and again and again, is that human beings need each other. We all need help. And so sometimes our help comes through the botanical kingdom, and they're these specialized phytochemicals that can join up with our immune system or our endocrine system or our cardiovascular system or whatever, and make some magic happen and just get you over that hurdle without as much energy and resources expended. Because this energy and resources are your vitality. And this is a core concept within holistic medicine, is our life forces is often described as vitality. And things like chronic infection, chronic illness, overbearing stress, feeling unsupported and disconnected from community and beyond it, and feeling like you don't have a purpose or a passion in your life, all of those things deplete vitality. And a lot of the work that I end up doing with herbs is helping to restore vitality in the body. In fact, we have this herbal medicine. I could just completely go off on a tangent here, but I'll
By
try
all
to
means.
contain myself.
I love your tangents.
We have a classification of herbs called adaptogens, and what that means is they literally help the body adapt to stress. And it's important to think about stress in that big picture fashion. So we can have this chronic stress that really is killing us slowly, ultimately. But stress is a component of evolution. So we need to have some stress in our lives to help us evolve and help us adapt. And there are certain herbs in all over the world whose core characteristics help us weird human beings to adapt to life itself. So when we're looking at an environment that is becoming increasingly destabilized through global warming and other factors, the ability of our physical bodies to be able to adapt to these changing environments is incredibly important for the survival of our species as a whole. I mean, just take that in for a second. Okay, so this is once again big picture. We literally have plants available to us, and these are the hardy plants. These are the plants that grow at extreme altitudes, and they grow in extreme, environments, and they're hardy and they're ugly and they're tenacious, and they taste terrible, which is an indication that they're good medicine, right? But these are the plants that have figured out how to survive. They are resilient. And one of the most gracious things that I can imagine is that how these plants literally offer their life force to us to help us to become resilient and capable of creative adaptation. I dispense more adaptogens out of my apothecary than any other herb, because this is what human beings need. We need the fortitude to adapt to our changing environment so that we can evolve as a species. We need to be able to evolve at that micro level, so within our own lives, but we also need to be able to evolve at that macro level, which is in the much bigger scheme of the evolution of nature in general. So these adaptogenic herbs and other herbs really provide very specific qualities to our health and well-being. And that is very different than what generalized nutrition provides us. Now, there's some herbs that I would call nutritive herbs, and stinging nettle is a very classic example of that. These herbs are known to be more like superfoods. In South America, maca is a superfood, and it's actually an herb, but it imparts very specific and powerful nutrients that help to amplify our ability to be resilient within our own environment and our circumstances. So to me, that is the core differentiation between using diet to help you to be healthy and then augmenting that with personalized herbal recommendations. That was a long answer.
No, that was a fantastic answer. It just gives me a lot to think about. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I try and talk to you so often, is because there's always these nuggets of wisdom and new perspectives that really enrich the way that I see the larger picture of health. Now, I know that the term regenerative it gets thrown around a lot for projects, techniques, but regenerative health has been a well-known concept for a while now. So moving on from how we can kind of use these different supplementations and herbs and stuff to help us kind of catch up in order to bridge the gap between deficiencies in the health that we're trying to achieve. Could you explain to us what regenerative health is and how it can be achieved holistically and naturally rather than something that we're obviously the far extreme side of this would be things like steroids for people who are trying to gain strength and muscle mass.
Right.
How can we do this in a way that is, really within the ethics of working within the environmental limitations and the resources that we have at hand?
I love all of your questions. They're really thought-provoking for me too. And I hope that this comes across as me sounding like I know what I'm doing, because I always have to pause here and go, wow, what a great question. What do I really think or feel about that?
Well, all of this comes from talking to you for many months now and the new perspectives on these topics that you've given me. And this is definitely where the inquiry comes from.
Right. So I really love the concept of regenerative healthcare or regenerative health. But I think it's important for us to take a step back for just a moment and understand that terminology through the lens of holistic medicine. Because really, for me, regenerative health is the balance between growth and degeneration. It comes back to a principle in nature that we cannot escape, which is the fact that we grow, we have life, and then eventually we die. And that death ends up...
No, you're not understanding me right, Crystal. I'm trying to get you to tell me how I can live forever.
I'm trying to help you to be comfortable with the fact that you're totally mortal.
I refuse to accept that, but go on.
That's hilarious. That is such a thing between us. But
it is.
It's really important. I mean, we cannot have a restoration of our soil without becoming accepting of the process of degeneration and what that means. Okay, so I think when we're thinking and defining the concept of regenerative health, we need to strongly move away from this concept of being able to live forever. I think that's a real problem within human consciousness in general, but it's particularly important here because there is no mechanism that will keep a human being alive forever, and that's a really good thing. We already have a problem with overpopulation, and so much of the problem that we have within regenerative agricultural practices and that has to do with the fact that human beings as a whole have a really hard time letting go. We have a really hard time with our creation turning back into dust. and especially at the health level.
Mm.
Our modern healthcare system, every single facet of it is designed to keep the human body alive no matter what. And that often looks very mechanical and grotesque. And the reason that it is because we have some innate challenge with true regeneration, which is cyclical. And nature teaches us that principle every single day in every single way possible. Nature is always inviting us into this dance of growth and degeneration. And that really is what health is all about. When I think about my own health, when I think about the definition of health, when I think about the health of my clients, ultimately it's not to preserve their body forever, especially in some malformed state. Okay? It's truly life to their fullest. No matter what that is, whether you are in a wheelchair the rest of your life, whether you are a child that's only here for 5 years, God bless, it is part of life. And so I really don't think that we can have an intelligent conversation about regenerative health without kind of having that core principle at its center.
Without accepting the full process.
Exactly. And if we can accept that full process, then we truly can engage with the concept of regenerative health, which means that my health inspires the health and well-being of another person, which inspires the health and well-being of my or the community garden. And the community garden ends up supporting the health and well-being of not only a community, but of birds and bees and worms and this entire process, right? Regenerative health really is about a healthy ecosystem. So we're kind of coming full circle in our conversation here, because we really can't discuss regenerative health and live from a regenerative health place without understanding sorry for the cliche, but the circle of life. All right. And so I want my health, right? I know.
It's very Lion King. I agree with you.
It's the earthy, crunchy side of me coming out. I can't help it. Right.
Hey, I'm right there with you.
Once again, it's all about balance. It's all about balance. And so when we're looking at the individual level what regenerative health looks like, that's when we take into that holistic picture. So how is my physical health, and what are the factors that contribute to that, and how do I maintain that, right? Because it's not a static position. Remember, I said when human beings become static, they get sick. So health is never a static place where you reach the top of the health mountain and you stay there, right? That is completely unrealistic, and I wish we would just throw that image out the door, because if I see somebody else climbing a mountain to promote a supplement, again, I'm going to tear my hair out. That's not healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's one of the things that we really echo within permaculture design too, is that what we're designing and what we're implementing is not a static system. Rather, it's a dynamic living one. And if you don't treat it through all the fluctuations and life cycles that it goes through, and recognize that you can't just implement it or plant it and then you're done, it takes a much more nuanced understanding of how to interact with those things, not just implement them.
It's really uncanny how they parallel each other. Healthcare, or what I think should be healthcare, and permaculture design. I mean, I know that we've talked about how permaculture design influences, every aspect of our life. And I really believe that. And I loved it when you handed me that vision, because it said, oh, wow, this is holistic medicine in a nutshell. So absolutely, we've got what needs to happen to help hold the physiological body in balance. at the same time as it is being influenced by things like gravity and time and other, uncontrollable variables and forces, right? Because we are all slowly.
I know, you're listing off all of the things that I just refuse to accept.
It's okay. You're still young. You'll get there.
Yep, it's true.
And then looking at how those same principles apply to our being as, in our mental state and our emotional state and maybe our energetic state of being as well. So holistic medicine encompasses the mind, body, heart, soul, on and on and on. But those are kind of the core tenets. And then I like to think, okay, so I have a good sense of what my physiological needs are, but it's going to ebb and flow. I mean, I'm going to hit a natural point in my life cycle where I'm in perimenopause. And that is not a disease state. It is a state of transformation. So everything might change, and probably it will if you're headed into one of those natural transition points within your life cycle. But another variable might be of, hey, you move to a whole different continent and you're in a different time zone and a different weather system, and you've got to figure out what your body needs in order to stay balanced within that. So we're really regenerative health is really about all of these intersecting circles that are constantly kind of ebbing and flowing and circling around each other within this giant thing we call life. And then we get to a point where it's time to start really actively participating in the degeneration process, or i.e. the aging or dying process. And we have to get prepared to move into that place. I'm particularly fascinated with that. Once again, like I was saying, in modern health, we have a really hard time accepting death as part of living. And so how do we return back to the soil in a way that supports regeneration? Not only supports, the viability of our grandchildren, but that of the entire planet and beyond.
It seems like one of the bigger challenges behind that, or at least from my perspective, is trying to remove your ego from it. It can be really hard on the idea or identity of self when you realize that it's temporary and that the things you've done and the efforts you've made, the relationships and such, are as temporary as your physical form. Even though, things like memories and ideas and projects may endure past that, it can be really hard to come to terms with just on an egoistic individual level, don't you think?
Absolutely. I'm not trying to make this seem simplistic at all. It's very complicated.
No, definitely not.
And I would say, too, that there are cultures around the world that have just life vision that promotes a more holistic way to live. And so those human beings have egos, as we all do.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that.
But they also are able to be satisfied within this natural law. And I think that the more we can make peace with our life and our environment, and just the fact that we are animals, we are part of nature just as much as anything else is, truly the better quality of life and the better state of health we're going to be able to experience. Ultimately, if we can be strategic in our own lives, where we are building, designing, and creating structure within our own lives that can be flexible, that can grow with our environment, we are ultimately participating in regenerative health. When we get stuck in building walls, when we get stuck in, my way is the best way, when we get stuck in, stubborn ideologies, everything begins to break down. Our physical bodies break down. Our morality breaks down, And interestingly, creativity dies. And I've been very fascinated with the concept of creativity as a quality that promotes health. And one of these days, I'm going to write a book on that. And I've said it publicly now.
I'm going to hold you to it.
The concept, right? I hope you do. The concept of creativity as a quality, I think it's an innate quality, but I also think it's something that we can cultivate, is a magic superpower that we don't utilize enough. And social science really is beginning to illuminate how incredibly important creativity is when it comes to evolution. We know that it contributes to the evolution of ideas. It certainly has contributed to the evolution of technology and society. But when we bring it back down to the micro level or the physiological level, there's some really interesting data coming out about how a person who has a creative personality tends to be far more resilient to stress. And they tend to have exponentially better quality of life. That is absolutely fascinating to me as a doctor. I'm fascinated by anything that amplifies quality of life. And creativity is one of those core tenets that seems to be essential in crafting and the living of quality of life for us.
And it seems to be in such contrast to the way that the kind of conventional medical world is going in constantly striving for longevity and extending life without necessarily making it worth living those extra years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you just encountered one of the biggest healthcare debates of the 20th century. And it's incredibly important, especially as we're looking at the baby boomer population aging. I mean, this is the hot topic right now, and I think that it's helpful to all of us to be able to understand that there really are some core things that we can focus on, such as cultivating our creative ability, cultivating resilience. You know what's fascinating is that a person who has the qualities that are typical of what's considered to be a resilient personality, they have an ability to function outside of what's called scarcity consciousness. And scarcity mindset or scarcity consciousness is something that actually goes beyond just this kind of like new age metaphysical principles. It really is its own science. And there are neurological changes in the brain when someone is in what's called scarcity mindset, and they literally have tunnel vision. Their thoughts become fixed. They're literally more prone to see quote unquote other. So when we're thinking about these huge international social issues such as racism and systemic suppression, people who are stuck in scarcity mindset are more likely to perpetuate concepts of racism and discrimination than people who've managed to get themselves out of scarcity mindset. And when you're outside of scarcity mindset, you're creative. You're a creator. You're an innovator. You're able to live outside of the box. And from that place, when we're looking at evolutionary strategy, you're ahead of the game. Like that's really what evolution is all about.
I mean, I can really attest to those things from my own perspective. that's been probably the biggest struggle in my journey as an entrepreneur, is finding a way to get, especially in the early days, out of this mindset of scarcity, which kind of breeds a continuation of that mindset. And as soon as you're able to get out of it, when the lack of stress stops hampering your personal health and creativity starts to flow as a result. I mean, that's been one of the most profound realizations in this journey that I've had, and certainly your guidance has really helped me to identify it and to find ways of realizing, like, oh, maybe this isn't necessarily just coming from me directly. Perhaps it's just a shift of mindset that's required to realize, you know, the gifts and the abundance that we do have all around us. But just as much, even from a selfish perspective, of being able to recover your own best abilities and, tap into this concept of a higher self that is operating without the fear and the limitation that it's very easy to fall into, like I'm sure any other entrepreneur can relate to this too, which just creates compounding limiting factors.
Right. Yeah. Yep. That's regenerative health right there.
That was fantastic. We just identified it in that sentence. I really prefer your more nuanced approach to it, but I'm a simple, blunt tool, so I have to simplify things.
Yeah, no, it's that simple and it's that complex. It yes, really is.
Exactly. It is both of those.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I think it's very illustrating of the human condition as a whole. I mean, we could spiral off into what is consciousness and all of that good stuff, but
oh, don't worry, I'll have you back on the podcast and we can go down the rabbit hole another time.
Great. But yes, I think the concept of regenerative health is incredibly important, especially as we're zooming into this modern era where we really do have, for the first time in history, we have significant things that we have to consider as an international population when it comes down to the very literal survival of our species. I mean, we are all encountering an incredible shift in our weather patterns that's going to absolutely impact every aspect of our living life that we know of. And we have concepts such as the ego now. I mean, that's only been around for 200 years. We have, or even less, we have concepts such as compassion that we're dealing with on an international scale that we've never done before. There are so many ways that human life is expanding exponentially, and I think regeneration is truly at the heart of that. No matter what your particular area of expertise and focus is, whether it's permaculture at the soil base, whether it's permaculture design and you're building these incredible homes like you're doing, whether it's more like my specialty is in healthcare, those types of things, we need a global shift to embrace the concept of regeneration.
And also realizing that each of those practices are connected, right?
Oh, of course. Well, that's regeneration. There is a fundamental understanding.
That's the holistic thinking.
Within regeneration is that everything is interconnected, and it needs to come out of just the spiritual communities, and it needs to move into the practicalities of real life.
Yeah, that's really well said. Now, there's one more concept, which as soon as I ask this question, you're going to be like, yes, of course, Oliver asked this. And that is, once you've kind of reached this level of health that you're comfortable with, you're feeling well, you're getting sick very infrequently, what's the next step? Now, the way that I would phrase it is, how do you go beyond that to sort of reach your superhuman potential? Because I feel like the definition of normal now has been degraded to sort of match what the general population is going through, and not at all representative of what the real potential for human health can be. So let's explore that topic a little more and give people something to aspire to beyond just not feeling terrible.
Oh, that's so good. Wow. So
because if you remember, I came to you with this when we were first talking, like, I had all of these digestive health issues that I really needed help with. But even back then I was talking about, like, how can we push it further? How can we reach this level of true potential? And you had some
Right.
amazing insights on this back then.
I think that it comes down to when we're a healthy being, we're full of energy. We're constantly regenerating energy. We're putting off energy. So where do we want to focus that energy? I think is the step. And I'll put it in less abstract ways. You can have all of the money in the world, but it does not buy you happiness. Happiness and true satisfaction, so we're coming back to that sense of quality of life, comes when we are able to help other people. We really truly feel fulfilled when we are able to freely offer our in an altruistic way. Human beings are only truly satisfied when we are able to give of our energy in an altruistic way. And when we're healthy, we have an abundance of energy that allows us to do that. It allows us to give without resentment. It allows us to give without having demands on that energy. So it allows us to give without expectation. It allows us to be creative and envision a new future, and it allows us to support the vision of other people. That's truly living at the next level. When we're able to be self-regenerating, we can participate in the regeneration of others and in life itself. And that's really where the concept of living your passion and living your dream comes from. It comes from that place of being able to be self-contained and then giving out beyond yourself without expecting anything in return. And that actually is the definition of true empathy from Brené Brown's work, is being able to give without expecting anything in return. And I think this is really important. It's really important when we consider the common conflicts within our relationships. It's really important for anybody in any type of service industry when we're looking at burnout. It's important when we look at elevating the quality of life in other people and other cultures. It's really important when we're considering the future of humanity itself. But I think it's very challenging to operate from that place if you're not at a regenerative state of health and well-being. We have the instinct to do that. I think it is very instinctual for human beings to help each other. However, if we're not able to be in balance within all of that, then energy ends up getting stolen and not returned. So if we can maintain a status of health that gives us extra energy, then our highest potential ends up being able to give energy freely. And that can look like whatever it looks like, whatever a passion is, whatever beauty is, whatever love, however you can define love. I think it ultimately is sustained through that concept and that principle.
Yeah, the beauty of the nuance of individual and different expressions of what that means to each person is truly remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and it's such an important concept, and yet I think we have it really convoluted and knotted up. And we have enormous amounts of burnout. We have people feeling underappreciated. We have chronic problems with not being able to connect well with other people. We're continually stripping resources out of the land, and we don't know how to put back. I mean, human beings are kind of a hot mess. I really do really love human beings. And as much as I love the plant world, I say I'm an odd herbalist because I love people probably even more than I love plants. And I'm able to see how plants give of themselves so selflessly, to us. And I think that, I look at them as our teachers. And when we're able to achieve that place of health, and that's an individual thing. Once again, we're not talking about summiting a mountain. We're talking about quality of life that feels satisfactory. If we have an abundance of energy, then we can give, and it might be a poem. It might be a prayer of gratitude. It might be a community garden. It might be, international politics. I mean, who knows what it is? But if you have the passion and the energy to go into that, then that is what creates that deep, true sense of love and satisfaction. And that's what life is really all about.
Wow, I think that's a perfect message to wrap up this session on. I am always impressed by the nuance and the wisdom that you approach health with, and the holistic sort of criteria and very large overreaching look of consideration that goes into the informed decisions that you make within your field.
Thank you.
So Crystal, before I let you go here, can you let our listeners know how they can reach out to you, how they can contact you, and some of the services that you provide through your company?
Oh, thank you. So I'm on social media just like anybody else. I can be found on Facebook. You can look up Wildlife, the number 4 and the letter U, Wildlife for You. That's my Facebook handle. So I can be found on Facebook. I have a business website for my personal clinic. The website for that is www.balancedliving, the number 4 and the letter U, so balancedlivingforyou.com. And I can be reached personally through email at herbs, HERBS, the number 4 and the word hope, herbsforhope @gmail.com.
Marvelous. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, Crystal. I'm sure we'll do a follow-up soon, because I always get so much out of these talks and the insights that you give, especially on health, which is obviously an urgent issue and has been with me for a long time, which is how we met. But yeah, I'd like to thank you again for the time that you spent with us today, and I'll be in touch with you again real soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Oliver. It's always such a pleasure to get to hang out with you. I love the way that you make me think. I love our energy together, and it's a real honor to get to talk with you about these things that I'm passionate about and share them with your listeners. So thank you.
It is my pleasure. All right. We'll catch up again soon. You have a great rest of your day.
Perfect. Thank you.
There you have it. Thanks once again to Crystal. I've included all the links that you need to reach out to her if any of you are looking for guidance in your own health journey. Now, before we wrap this up, just remember that these episodes are only the beginning of the learning resources, design and coaching services, in-person courses, and interactive community that are available through Regenerative Skills. The Discord server is our free community where you can connect with other like-minded listeners, exchange ideas, stories, tips, and resources, as well as interact with me directly and quite a few former guests from this show. Our Instagram account @regen_skills is the best place to see the projects that me and the team are working on, both for clients and collaborators, as well as on our own properties. I'll also be announcing the certification courses, workshops, and gatherings that we've got coming up later this year. If you're interested in getting dedicated support for your own project, you can now schedule a free planning session with one of our team members through the request form on our website. You can also find all the links, show notes, and past resources there at regenerativeskills.com. We truly believe that no matter your experience, your knowledge, abilities, resources, or background, you can be a powerful force for regeneration on this planet, and we're here to help you find your path. So as always, remember to keep taking those little steps every day towards a regenerative future, and I'll be right by your side along the way.